Township cleaned all that dirt out and everything, and they put that binder down. The only thing I don't like is like that wall that the train sits on. No, that far down below it. It's dirt. I don't think it would ever kick out.
You can if you want to. Yeah, just talk right. Yeah, you projected just fine over.
You know, them kids was down there on your break.
Okay.
Now,
All right. All right. I'll set you up, and all you have to do is click.
I seen them. I chased them out there.
It's on already. Yes.
That lady on the corner had already called the police. She got pictures of them. I told her to get the hell out of there. They ran up the hill. It looked like it was about 14, 15. They were out on top of that center pier. They fall on piece in their rebar.
Yeah, they got the one near the end cap with the safety.
Yeah, but not all of
Yeah,
them.
not the middle ones, you're right.
Are you guys ready? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Eric, are you ready? Okay. So I'm going to call this public hearing to order. In attendance this evening are Supervisors Fisher, Agizio, Fleer, Casiola, Savavik. In addition, our Township Engineer Dan Dizeroth, our Solicitor Gretchen Moore. If you plan to participate in tonight's hearing, can I ask you to please stand so you can be sworn in by our court reporter? If you're going to speak at all or think you might speak at all, I would stand and get sworn in now.
Solemnly swear affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Is there anyone here this evening that is seeking standing? Okay. Moving on. So this public hearing is to consider conditional use application 2021-0024 filed by Miranda Homes for the Silver Creek Cluster Housing Development off of Rising Road, McDonald, PA. Tax parcel 140-007-00000019-00. The public hearing was duly advertised on August 4th and August 9th. You want to do your, just, if I could ask you to state your name and if you're with a company, or your name and address when you come, and please make sure you're speaking into a microphone. Thank you.
Good evening. Ed Moore with Scheffler & Company. Tonight we'll have a brief presentation on the new Silver Creek single-family residential cluster development, and then we'll turn everything over to questions. So also with me tonight is Michael Seedorf from Miranda Homes, and from David E. Wooster & Associates, Josh Haydu, who can talk traffic for us. First off, the Cecil Township zoning map, just to give you an idea of where the property is. The property is zoned R1, low-density residential. We are proposing a cluster development, and it is a conditional use. The total property is 138.41 acres, and we have frontage along Rising, sorry. When we first take a look at the project, we took a look at the existing conditions in the site analysis plan. What this plan shows you here, the red is the steeper slopes. We also have in blue the wetlands and streams delineated. And then we took our limited disturbance, and that's the dark black line there, and superimposed it over top of this plan. And the goal is to avoid the steeper slopes as much as possible. What you can see we've done there is a lot of white where we're developing. And then we've also avoided the wetlands and the streams. We took a look at the zoning requirements for the cluster zoning. The one column is required by your ordinance. The second one is what we propose. The front yard setback required by code is 25 feet. We are proposing 25 feet. The side yard setback is 15 feet total or 5-foot minimum. We're proposing 7.5 feet each side or 15 feet total. Minimum lot width as per code is 65 feet. We're proposing 66 is the smallest. Our minimum lot area is 10,890 square feet by code, and that's our smallest lot. The maximum building height will be 35 feet, which we would adhere to. And the density permitted is 2 dwelling units per acre, or 277 units permitted, and we're proposing 229 units. So as you can see by your ordinance, we're meeting all these requirements. Benefits of a cluster development: it's a compact development. There's more dedicated open space than conventional zoning. There's less earth disturbance, and we preserve more natural features, streams, wooded slopes, and wildlife habitat. The proposed plan, you see here the white box is the proposed homes. Again, there are 229 single-family residential lots. The entrance to the site is directly across from the Beltway ramp. We have open space, it's part of the dark green, as well as the wooded areas to remain as the dark green. Sidewalks on each side of the street are proposed. There'll be a mailbox cluster towards the entrance where people can park, get their mail. That we're also proposing perimeter buffer yards. There's wetlands and streams that are delineated that will remain undisturbed. There will be 3 stormwater management detention basins to control the runoff. The project will be constructed in phases, although at this time we're not sure how many phases it will be. And the development will be served by both public sewer and public water. Typical lot layout. This is a really exciting slide. It shows a typical lot. The key point of this is a lot of times we get a question of, are the driveways long enough to park a car in? From the face of the building, this shows we have 29 feet to the start of the sidewalk, so it's plenty big enough to put a car in the driveway without overhanging the sidewalk. So that's the main purpose of this slide here. When you talk open space and buffer yards, this plan here in the green is the proposed open space. The open space required is a minimum of 50% of the gross site area, and 138.41 acres were required to have 69.2 acres of open space. The current plan proposes 69.49 acres of open space. And the open space will be owned by the future HOA, and it will remain in a natural and undisturbed condition in perpetuity. Also required a 25-foot buffer yard along the entire perimeter. We're providing that. That's shown here in red. Again, this will be owned by the future homeowners association and will remain in a natural and undisturbed condition in perpetuity. Stormwater control, as I mentioned, there's 3 stormwater detention basins. They're proposed to control the peak runoff rates and provide volume control of any increase in the impervious areas. And these basins will be designed to your township standards. For a little talk on traffic, I'm going to turn it over to Josh to just discuss that for a minute.
Good evening, everybody. Josh Hader with David Worcester and Associates. We will be preparing the traffic study for this development.
If it's easier, you can hold that microphone so you don't have to lean over. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We will be conducting a traffic study for this development. The access along Rising Road will require a highway occupancy permit from Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. So the traffic study has already been scoped with PennDOT District 12, which this is in. Given its proximity to District 11, they also participated in the scoping meeting, as well as representatives of Cecil Township and the Gateway Engineers. So the intersections that we're going to be looking at are circled here in blue. The front door, obviously, or the main access to the development here, coming off the new road that goes up to the Beltway. Additionally, Rising Road, where it meets Miller's Run Road, those 2 intersections that are kind of clustered together right there, just beyond the railroad overpass. The railroad overpass is something that we've also been asked to evaluate. We understand that road is quite narrow underneath. Sight distance, looking through it, it can be limited. So that has been a prescribed item that we're going to be looking at much more closely in the traffic study. But at this point, we have not conducted the study. We have only scoped it. When school gets back in session, we can, get that on the schedule and prepare the study as soon as Miranda authorizes us to do that. But with the information I have, I am here primarily tonight to answer any questions as best I can. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ed to finish the presentation, but I'll be back up for questions at the end.
Some sample building elevations of what these units will probably look like. You can see that in front of you. The average home size between 1,800 square feet and 3,200 square feet, and the cost of the homes anywhere from the upper 300,000 to the upper 400,000. We received a letter from Gateway, review letter on July 13th. We addressed those comments and resubmitted plans on July 15th. And at this point, we'll open up to any questions you might have.
May I just comment for the record that our review of the plan just was a review of the application submission that they had. There's certain requirements within the submission for the conditional use. That's what our comments were related to. We don't have any comments on the plan at this point because the plan is just being submitted for the use at this time.
I have a couple things. How wide are you planning on your sidewalks being?
Whatever's to code, I believe it's 4 feet, but if whatever's required.
Well, we've been making them 4 feet, right? And second thing is, you show no overflow parking.
Right, they're all single-family homes. We assume you get 2 cars.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
I want overflow parking somewhere. I mean, we've done it with Ryan and everybody else.
We all agree too with that.
Go
Just
ahead.
our visitors.
There was a
Yeah.
question that was, go, you, something else?
The other thing is this a wooded area between,
Let me see if I can call it back up.
on the right, between these lots, it shows on this print that it's,
Ron, talk into your microphone.
on this print here, it shows like vegetation.
Okay.
Is there gonna be vegetation between this row of houses in the top and a row on the bottom?
Yeah, everything there that's in the dark green is vegetation to remain. Will only be
No,
removed.
I'm in between the two streets.
Are you talking in the big loop?
Yeah, he sees it on this drawing, it's not on that drawing that's up. He sees these here, between the back-to-back lots.
Probably not. There'll probably be grading all in through there, so any of the trees that are in that area will be removed.
What's that representing, those little squiggly lines then?
I'd have to see. I don't know if they're contours.
No.
It looks like a tree buffer.
Yeah, it looks like.
If we can keep those trees when we're done with grading, we will. That's probably what that represents, is there's probably not grading on the grading plan in that area. So those trees will remain if there's no grading.
And if there is,
They'll be gone.
and it'll be put back like that?
Excuse me, can you keep your voice up or talk into the microphone? I didn't hear your question.
Can you repeat your question?
Never mind, I don't have one yet.
Okay.
Looking at these contours, is that a valley between them houses?
I believe so, yes.
And that's where the water is gonna flow?
And we'll take a look at the stormwater that happens between the lots, and we'll have inlets and pipe everything to the stormwater basin. So we'll take a look at that. We have a lot of engineering left to do on these plans. But yeah, we'll take a look at that.
Well, definitely wanna see overflow parking on both ends of the development.
That stream that's located on there, the starting place is where?
Which stream are you talking about?
The one that runs through that center portion of the driveway?
That's not a stream.
These are streams?
Yeah.
Yeah, where does that start at? Yeah, or where's it coming from?
But you can see maybe on the color map, it stands out a little better for you. You can see it starts at the top of the property, and it'll cross our site and go under our new road.
And then under the new road, what happens to it?
It-
I don't see where it goes
back
after
in
that.
its natural course at that point. So, yeah, maybe the plans aren't clear enough to where it
All
ends.
this water leads down.
To the stream in the front.
All this water leads towards the stream that's down on along Creedmoor, where we're replacing the bridge.
Then in the Miller's Run.
Yes, and then eventually to Miller's Run, yes.
Should that be drawn on there or shown where it continues on?
So the purpose of this exercise is just, I mean, there's a lot that needs shown on these plans. So it's really the question of the conditional use of the property within in the R1 for cluster that the board is deciding on. You'll have a lot of other opportunity to review plans if this moves on. They have to, each individual plan phase will be, the overall plan has to be approved for engineering, and then they have to do individual plans as they come in for the development. So again, it's more of, do you think this is appropriate for a cluster development on this property? And are there any conditions that you want to apply to that as a conditional use?
Okay.
I do have, I wanted to comment on, I passed out to everybody this drawing here. This is from our ordinance book. Ed, you mentioned several times, 3 times, I think, the open space buffer yards.
Yes, sir.
I mean, if you've seen this in our ordinance, it's what it's envisioned to look like. Every lot fronts an open space. This is, I mean, this area in the middle, it's a typical, those lots are back to back where Ron referred to. I mean, where's the buffer yard for any of those houses there? This is a concept where it's supposed to be, afford privacy. They have smaller lots, but they still have some privacy because of the access, like frontage, is this, shows on individual lots, on open space. This looks like it's just a typical,
City, huh?
well, typical layout. I mean, how are all these people, even on this far side over here, on that edge there and up around that edge, they're abutting just that 25-foot required perimeter buffer, but the ordinance always talks about the developer is encouraged to provide privacy by other means other than a large front yard, and it's, that's what this is supposed to represent. I mean, you don't have a single lot like that.
I'm sure Miranda would be amenable to, where those lots back up to each other, is planting some buffer in between those back lots to help buffer those two lots.
It's not just a planting buffer so much as it's supposed to be a cluster development where all the lots seem to have access to a wild and natural area, not just some linear screen right on the property line.
If you go up to Windsor Woods where Miranda developed, them houses, it's like there's only 50 feet between the backs. And they're right up against them. Nobody has no privacy at all. I wouldn't like to see that again.
I mean, if you look at, if the board members, if you look at this on page 129 that I sent, I mean, that's what was envisioned as a cluster development. And like I said, there's not one lot like this that meets or matches that at all. It's just like as if you laid out a subdivision on all the good property and all the steep slopes, it was just avoided to meet the 50%. Dan, did you get a copy of this?
Yeah, I'm aware of that, yes.
I mean, do you see any lots that meet that, that look like that diagram at all?
Well, I think that this, as you point out, the circular street to the left has more, people can look into open space
Right.
from those rear lots, and then the perimeter lots get to look at open space or natural ground, whereas this is more like a typical block and lot, as you said.
I mean, was any consideration given to what we envisioned as a cluster development? I was here when the township adopted it. We had experts come in and help us put a cluster development together. when the ordinance was first written, and it was geared towards privacy, to help the developer be creative and use smaller lots, but to still afford them the ability to have wide open spaces at their houses.
Yeah, it's difficult in that portion you were just referring to because of the streams and the wetlands on the top portion of the site. We can't really push it and open it up, that interior, as much. And there's steep slopes to the bottom of the site too that's constricting. So it was tough to open that circle up, if you will, like we did on the left.
All right.
How far
There-
is it between them lots?
He said.
I believe each lot is 160-some feet deep.
There was another remark brought up at the Planning Commission by Budovich that she talked about, or asking you for 2 entrances. Was that addressed, or did you guys look into that?
We did.
And your findings?
As you can see on your screen here, we have the possibly 2 options. This one option comes, as you can see, to the, I guess I'll say, north of the treatment plant. This would be an emergency access road, 15 feet or so wide, about 15% slope, so it's not real steep, paved. I'm assuming gates at both ends to keep people from using it. So there's one option that we can get people out over to Creedmoor, and then the second option too would be, and this, it's kind of tough to see here, but this entrance would be 30 feet or so wide, so 3 lanes wide up to the first intersection. So it's wider than the typical street. And this is if one of the lanes was shut down or a couple of the lanes were shut down, there'd be room enough because it would be wide enough to skirt by. So those were 2 options that we thought of for emergency accesses.
So that you're aware on that point, Gretchen and I were just over here talking, we have adopted the International Fire Code, and part of the code requires that 1 or 2 dwelling residential developments of 1 or 2 family dwellings where the number of the dwellings exceeds 30 units shall be provided with 2 separate and approved fire apparatus access roads, which is 2 entrances. And it says there's an exception, but the exception requires that the homes be sprinkled, which they're not going to be sprinkled. So there's a requirement, the way that our solicitor and I read that the International Fire Code requires 2 entrances and exits.
Are you going to address that yet?
Other than what we have here, I have no other comment on what our thoughts were on getting emergency access in and out, a second entrance.
All right.
So just so that you're aware in the future planning of it, it is required.
Yeah, I mean, we can't get to the back. I believe that's Napoli back there. Is that the name of the street? We can't-
Napoli.
North DePauli.
We have to buy property to get to that point. And then to get out on the other side of Rising Road, it's just the topography is too steep. So it's a challenge to get 2 ways in and out.
One other thing, it says the cluster development subdivision provisions will accomplish the township's goals and objectives by providing flexible development options in those areas where standard rectilinear development patterns are not suitable due to physical conditions. So you have physical conditions, and it seems like you went back to just a typical PRD rather than trying to accomplish what the goal was. I mean, to me, this looks like a PRD, and actually more dense PRD.
Is there a reason that you chose cluster over PRD?
Well, you can't do a PRD in R1.
Yeah, you can't.
You have to request a zoning change to R2 to get to ask for a PRD.
Tom, are you done? I have a
well,
couple of
yeah,
questions.
I-
I don't want to jump in if you're still
Well,
asking
I just think he's not ready to comment on it. Those are the things that we have to discuss, before we can consider approval. And I know you're not ready to discuss it, but like the things she mentioned, the things I mentioned, the things Ron mentioned, and Eric on it, we need to
I have a couple
address
more
those.
questions or things to
Okay, go ahead.
consider. My one question is, how far off of DePauli is it? Do you know, North DePauli?
Mike, you have to know that? Not off the top of my head.
So that is something like I would like to know, is because there are homes that sit off North DePauli, and residents are asking how far down this development is going to be from their existing homes. And then the traffic study, that is a serious concern for me. I drive Rising because that's the area that I live, where that turn is under the railroad tracks. So I am curious when that, you expect that traffic study to be completed, because that would be something that needs to be seriously considered, yeah, before approval could be given by this board.
I don't know at this time. The study was not a requirement of the conditional use, I don't believe. But regardless, we would at least have to wait until school is back in session.
Okay.
So
But the condition,
at the very earliest, it would be.
but conditional use also says there's listed conditions that are expressed criteria and standards, plus any other conditions that the board has to apply. So I mean, it might not have been a written condition, but as she mentioned, it's something that, it's a condition that's, we're gonna have, so.
Yeah,
I-
you could make it a condition. But
I think
just
that-
coming into this meeting tonight, we haven't been authorized to do the study, and a big part of that is because since it's been scoped, school has been out of session, and
Right.
PennDOT is requiring that we don't do a study until school is back in session. So
Which makes sense. I just think, just so that you're aware, that is something that this board is going to take into serious consideration before approving the plan. So I would, whoever you need to tell that we've asked and stressed the importance of a traffic study and the results of that traffic study before it's approved, I would make that known.
understood.
Thank you.
On that note of the trestle, there was discussion brought up at the planning commission, and you mentioned you were going to investigate the train and the tracks, or whether its use, or how is your study? Have you done any further study on that, the train?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
We believe that that's, I'm under the impression that that is an active rail line.
Yes, it is. It's very
It
active.
absolutely is.
Yeah, which very much limits anybody's ability to do anything to widen that